today I don't feel very deep today.
Okay, Erin, we're ready to begin. Let's welcome Erin Sullivan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Now, I wrote a book called The Astrology of Family Dynamics, and that's the name of the American publication. It was called Dynasty, The Astrology of Family Dynamics, in the British edition when it first came out. But because of the television program, which some of you may or may not remember, Dynasty, or Dynasty as it is in England, they didn't want to use that title in America. So that it just is the Astrology of Family Dynamics, which is fine with me. But today what I'm going to do is not the most thorough job, because I have another major lecture that I'm giving to Linda, who, if anybody wants it, can get it. But we don't have enough time, and I want people to ask questions. So I've made a small PowerPoint, which is truly small. And we'll go through the houses from the 12th to the 8th to the 4th, which sounds a little odd, but you'll see what I mean when I start talking about it. So this diagram I had so much fun with, because I was in one of my, really, really, intense, intellectually sound times where I was creating the whole system and the understanding of families before I started writing about it. Just because we all come from one doesn't necessarily mean that we understand exactly what it is that the astrology will bring up for us. And so what I've done is I've put us into a categorization in an epochal sense. In other words, the age of Pisces shifting into the Aquarius age as our evolution develops in families, because anybody who's over 30, for example, or up to 60 or 70 will know that there has been a major shift in the function of a family and how chaotic it actually is these days. But when I think in terms of looking at us in this sort of transitional period of the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, which Dane Rudolph said was about 2020. Now, or from 2020 to 2060. So we're actually right on the cusp of shifting from Pisces, a water sign, as an epoch, which are all 2,400, 500 years long, 2,400, 500 years long. Then there's 12 of them. And now we're moving into the Aquarius age, and then, which means that we would then be, in a sense, shifting forward into the future. Now, in this diagram, what I did was I started off with myself, yourself, in the box, and then the members of family all attached to you. And then, so that's our immediate family background, okay? And I got Mars in red as it's poking out because it's rebellious, and it actually allows us to create more than one kind of family. And what we're also looking at is the past and also the future, and how families in the past are origin and roots, which is really our original cultural background, as it says in the diagram. And it's the old social order. And when we look into the future, we're really looking at something that has to become a new social order, which we're already experiencing, especially now in this time of the COVID. About to put the phone off. And we're really experiencing a new social order. There have been pandemics before, and quite often people will forget that the AIDS pandemic was, people still don't want to remember it, because I had to bring it up, and it was never followed through when I was on Facebook and stuff. I said, it's not just about, this pandemic. We've had one, and it was in the sort of 70s and 80s, and that was AIDS, because it killed millions of people. And so here we are in another pandemic, only this one is really a mystery, and the scientists are working like crazy. That's the one wonderful thing about scientists, is that they, not because there's something, emotionally crooked about them, but they're very excited about this because they want to fix it. They want to cure. They want to find a cure. So they're hard at work. So right now we're in a situation where, family is very important. We don't maybe get to spend as much time with them as we'd like to. And so this has been, a very, very disturbing period of time with the COVID-19 and the pandemic that has been going on. It would have been back in October, November, when it was gestating, because that's when I was looking at the ephemeris, and then looking ahead, because I still use an ephemeris, looking ahead, and I went, oh my God, what's going to happen in January and February into March, when Sun conjuncts Neptune and Venus conjuncts Uranus. And it was on March the 8th when they announced, absolutely and really what was going on. And so our whole entry from departure of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius is about dealing with entirely new, because this is a 24,500 year cycle, from Aries to, it goes backward actually. It's the precession of the equinox, as it's called. So here we are today, still in the Pisces age, and we have a family. And it doesn't matter what kind of a family it was, but we can talk about the family when I get into my little very short slideshow. But we can see that there's us, the self, and then there's our family members. And then surrounding it and keeping it into the closure is Saturn. Now, Saturn is, of course, the planet, that is the last planet that we can see visually in the night sky. And Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are really a continuum of individual emergence, and Neptune is more like the kind of spiritual condition of the times, and Pluto are the cathartic issues of the zeitgeist, as it were, is what's going on. And I think you know what I'm talking about, even without going into it in any detail and depth. And so, we have Saturn containing our immediate cultural background, which influences us tremendously. And that cultural background is actually ruled by Jupiter and Saturn, because our immediate inner life and family origins are ruled, go back a bit, Linda, are ruled by Moon, Venus, and Mercury. Okay, those are the personal planets, aren't they? And then the cultural planets, well, Mars is just a maverick. It actually is going retrograde on the day that Isar was supposed to start. And that, I've been talking to Ray Merriman quite a bit about this, but on September the 9th, that was when Isar was supposed to really begin, and that's when Mars stationed retrograde. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, in a very unfortunate way, because I really wanted to go, and we all wanted to go. And so what we have with the families are the individual aspect of the family, which are our angles and the sun, okay, because the sun moves 1 degree in a day. And then there's the moon, which moves about anywhere from sort of 11 to 13 times around in a year. And the family is the moon and Venus and Mercury. And then there's Mars that sort of hangs out in the middle, trying to cause trouble between Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so our personal culture and our immediate society are really Jupiter and Saturn. And this is part of the big family. And the collective cultural mores are usually bound by Saturn. And then the mega collective global consciousness is where we don't have control or psychological methodologies where we can somehow train them, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because they're very long in their cycles. And Pluto is particularly unusual because it has an orb that inclines from the ecliptic at a degree of 17, so that as it went through Scorpio, it was there for like 7 or 8 years. And then when it gets out into the furthest level of its inclination, it spends 32 years in the sign of Taurus. So just be glad that you're not born in the sign of Taurus, where you have Pluto transiting everything for 32 years. Okay, you can move forward. Does anybody have any questions about this diagram? Don Olson, there you are. Hi, welcome. Okay, let's move to the first slide. And as I said, this is not my best day, and I'm going to make available another talk that I gave on the water houses in the family. But I wanted to start off in the way which it appears as we are born. And in the 12th house is the first house, because as we are born, the ascendant begins to decline and we move up into the 12th house. And so the 12th house really has to do with the ancestral league. It's a house that we've often called unconscious. It's not necessarily that we're unconscious of it, it's that we're not necessarily in sync with the ancestral league. There's always a system breaker in the family dynamic. And families that love to talk about the weirdo or the one that did the different thing, or who broke the system and changed it for the positive, and or somebody who was kind of shunned and sent off to the house and never to be seen again. And so the 12th house has more to do with the psyche, because when we're born, we are not conscious in the way that we are by the time we're, say, 14 or 15 and into our more mature years. The 12th house is the secret house. It's where we keep the memories that we don't really actually have intellectual access to, but that that do shape and form our emotional base of operations. And so if you have planets in, or a sign on the cusp of the 12th, which you do, and your ascendant, remember that the ascendant basically moves about 1 degree every 4 minutes. And now that does change with the sign, but we've got it moving up, 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 so that the 12th house drops down, down, down. And so the 12th house I see as being our collective unconscious, and that's what we're born into, is a non-personal situation wherein we experience our lives as infants and as very small children in a very unusual way that can be quite different from the rest of the family. And there's a lot of ideas that the 12th house has to do with, dark secrets and so forth. And I don't know that all secrets are dark, but some of them might well be. And certainly the method of being, in the 12th house, I think what we're looking at is really a situation where it more has to do with the cosmic family soul. So it's bigger than just your mom and your dad and your sisters and your brothers and cousins and etc. It's really a place in which the origins of all humanity actually reside, and they dwell in their ancestral site. And I think this site is located via you can locate it via the reptile brain, the sort of pre-cortex brain, which actually has a record of the primal struggles for survival. And it's a place where our darkest survival instincts are still extremely active and functional. And so we know we have this place in us, as well as a racial memory where we may have dreams of gods and monsters and unknown skies where there's 3 suns or 8 moons rising and setting. It's the place where the recollection of the womb lies. So we're still enwombed, if you will, in the 12th house. And also it seems that the 12th house represents, it doesn't seem, it is. It represents the first couple of hours after the birth. And so it's likely to house the earliest recollections that we have after incarnation, when we're embodied in the mother, but we don't birth until we emerge from that, sea of the womb into the hardness and the harshness of the world. And, the thing is the first thing that a baby does, which gives everybody joy, is it cries, it screams, and it makes everyone happy because it's alive, yeah? So the crying and the screaming indicates that the baby has arrived, it's come, and it's going to begin something. And because it represents the first couple of hours after birth, I think that it does also hold areas in which mysterious conditions such as hypnotherapists, rebirth workers, depth psychoanalysts like Jungians really try to help individuals actually reach back into this realm. So psychologically, the 12th house does represent hidden and suppressed memories, even though it might have happened when you were 12 or when you were 23. But this is what real analysis is about. It's about the, sort of lying in the 12th house in itself is a source of the Weltschmerz, which is the German term for world pain. And so, we're all connected to each other. We're all one in this sense. And it's the basic tenet of all the old religions. And it's also in the 12th house where we meet the ancestors of the entire human race. I mean, very likely the pre-human race, the organism of humanity, is where we will meet this sort of thing. And it looks like to me it's also the house of incarceration as well as incarnation, because we often find ourselves, say the 12th house rules jail, for example. So you're being incarcerated. So to be incarnated means to fold the soul, 12th house, into a body, which actually happens in the 8th house, because the 4th house is the family. You'll see I'm doing this very differently. The 12th house is the place wherein we are, have our ancestral league leading back and back and back into our personal unconscious and our life connection to this ancestral line. The 12th house doesn't really offer a rational excuse for it. So it is a non-rational house. It's a water house. So is the 8th, so is the 4th. But there's an evolution that goes on. And as I pointed out earlier in the very beginning, the reason I set it up this way to explain what I'm thinking is because it is the ascendant that rises as the earth turns, and this ascendant rises, and eventually the 12th house becomes the first house, and et cetera, et cetera. But if we're returned, also being insane. In other words, going through a period where you're not clean, sanity. It's not sanitation. So that it's possible to actually feel that you're quite mad at times. And, I don't mean mad, angry, but I mean, really quite lunatic-y. And so the lunatic in you, I think, really falls into this house as well, because a person who's lost any tentative boundary at all between their personal realm and their deeper archetypal realm does enter a place that it can be called madness. But it can also be called superconscious. Yeah, so that it's not just about being mad, it's about being superconscious, which is very uncomfortable for not only the individual who may be experiencing it, but it also would be uncomfortable for other people if you're trying to talk about it, except for an analyst or a therapist or someone who's been trained in the understanding that the psyche is a place of mystery and a place of origin. And the place of origin lies in deep, deep in the soul. I mean, the Platonic picture, for example, Plato, tells of the soul making a journey through the underworld after departing from the body. And it meets various experiences and undergoes trials, all of which are tailored to the incarnate experience of the previous life. And it's designed, according to Plato in his 10th house of the book, it's designed to prepare the soul for its next reincarnation. So essentially, we're just incarnate in the body, carne, in the meat of the body, in the 12th house, but it's also possibly an indication of where we may incarnate at another time. And again, that would be something to think about and to look at in your own chart first, because you know it best. But it's not really, I think we don't really learn anything if we spend our entire lives trying to recall what we knew before we were born. And this is a very popular activity these days. And some of it's real crazy, and some of it's actually quite interesting. Every new idea that hits the planet always has its sort of lunatic. You can move the slide now. I think it goes to the 12th house. Yeah, if we go into the Neptunian Piscean realm and the ancestors in our very deep psyche, we might find out that there really is no such thing, though it's not stated as such, that a philosophy that I've been talking about actually implies a diachronous time, and that our souls actually don't live in a time of like 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, but live in a kind of pan-temporal or cross-temporal place. And it's locked temporality by the incarnation into the body. So the body is the house of the soul. And so when we get into the family in the 4th house, I call this region is the 12th house. It's the horoscopic place where the incarnate soul does reside, and it's deeply buried in the body, and it's longing. It longs, and sometimes we have these feelings where we feel like we're longing for something, and we don't really know what it is. But it may well be that we're trying to find the meaning, if there is any, to life. And possibly one of the best ways of surviving is to find some kind of meaning in life. Yeah, and in which case you embody something that's a lot more interesting. I think it's more when, according to Plato, the highest achievement in life is to go about recollecting the soul's knowledge, which results in wisdom. So recollection means to recollect what you've been through in various lifetimes. And I go on that one forever. But on a more humorous note, somebody once said that God invented time so that everything didn't happen all at once. But in fact, this all at once is the soul's time, not incarnate time. So everything actually does happen all at once. So I think that with Neptune being its ruler, wherever we have it, we have natural sort of endomorphins or painkillers. And the first pain is the pain of birth. I mean, if a baby doesn't scream, there's a lot of alarm going on in the operating room or in the birthing bed or wherever the child is being born. And they have to sort of give it a smack on its bottom so that it will gasp and breathe and scream, which says, oh, then if it doesn't do that and it does not get born and does not emerge from the uterus, then it's actually dangerous. And we've seen situations where that's happened for people. And so the 12th house planets, I think, because of where they are, and the 12th house actually is contained by the sort of the cusp of the 11th and the cusp of the 1st is the 12th house. But as the earth turns and the first house rises, the 12th house becomes the first house. So we actually do give birth in accord with the turning of the wheel of the horoscope. So, you know, we can even sort of imagine in our own minds our own horoscope as it turns, as we rise into the birth. For example, several times I have seen where someone is born with Pluto, the planet Pluto, in their 12th house by 5 to 10 degrees, let's say. And that means that in the course of the birth, because it's in the 12th house, the ascendant will have gone over the Pluto, and there may have been a danger to the mother at the time of the birth. And this is not just a story that I dreamed up. It's one that I've seen and heard through clientele. And so I think it's very important that if we are disconnected from our 12th house or from our soul and the 12th house planets that are in it, in order for them to become connected to our bodies, we can suffer emotional disconnection, and the body then becomes the symptom, because the body is the house of the soul. And I know that several people listening, and one for sure I know, understand this really clearly through working with other people and recognizing that we do have this tendency for psychosomatic, in other words, soma, which means body in Greek, and psyche, which is the soul in Greek. Psychosomatic is where the soul and the body become interconnected, and they result in something phenomenally physical in the actual body. And so I think that if there's a difficult birth, that the soul will recall the struggle in the uterine tunnel out into the world. My brother actually had a very difficult birth, and I was 16 when he was born. It was a second marriage of my mother. And I remember my mother screaming and screaming at the doctor, who was her friend, and just really, really looking at how the baby is experiencing its emergence out of the womb. And I've got 3 really big chapters in my book on family dynamics that do talk about this very much. And so when we think in terms of Neptune, we think about the soul and ancestral memories and the recollection of the birth of the body. In other words, many health workers and alternative, as they are called, which I don't really think they're alternative. I think they're pretty straight. I have several very close friends who work with the mind, body, soul as a unit. And that's what it is. And the 12th house is where we are indeed all one. And so the babies who are Piscean, I put here's the symbolic attraction to certain toys and people, strong aversions to things for Pisces or 12th house children. They are very suspicious of anything new. And so it's important to let them know, or to maybe even leave a toy somewhere in the room and let it find the toy so that it can find it itself and isn't being forced into it. So I've seen that in some babies. It's very interesting.
So Erin, we have a question for you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
I can't, Karen, I can't hear you, love. It's very quiet.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, hi. Oh, Carolyn, Cheryl,
Erin.
How are you?
I'm well. Yourself? You look great.
Oh, thank you.
I was asking a question about, I have Pluto in the 4th.
Yeah. We'll get there. Don't worry.
Conjunct Ceres.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm away from the screen I was on. Hold on. So
okay. I'm going to go from the 12th to the 8th to the 4th house.
Okay. All right. I came in late, so I wasn't sure if you'd done it.
No. Oh, I look like I'm going backwards, but I'm actually going in accord with the turning of the earth and the rising of the ascendant.
Okay.
And so the 12th house is actually our first, it's where we're born, because that's where we're in the womb, in the waters of the womb, and then we're birthed through the birth canal, and then we scream, and then we make a noise, and then we're born, and everybody's glad. And then we move on. Okay, so wait till we get to the 4th house, and then ask me your question, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Erin.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, Linda, we can move on. Does anybody have any other questions, by the way, or comments? Any things that they have thought of while I was talking about the Neptune?
Yes, Erin, let's go back to the 12th for a moment.
Yeah, let's.
The symbolic attraction to certain toys, people, situations and things.
Yes.
Would you give us an example of perhaps, let's say, Venus ruling the 12th house cusp? And, you know, how would this play out in the life?
Well, I think if Venus, like if it was a Libran or Taurian 12th house, it depends on whether it's the air sign or the earth.
Let's say Libran.
But let's say if it's Libra or Venus in the 12th, it would be a very important relationship between the body, which is Venus, because Venus is both Taurus, and also Libra, the mind. And so there's the body and the mind interacting at the same time. And very often people who, say, have Mercury in the 12th house have very unusual ways of conceiving ideas and bring very much originality to ideas because they don't stick with the norm. Because the 12th house Neptune in Pisces, they have to do with our deepest self. And so with that, it does mean that if we have a planet in the 12th, then it's going to have the connotations that I've been just talking about. Like I have a 12th house Mercury and it's retrograde. And I was very clever as a child. And I was very funny. And but I knew what people were really thinking. I knew. And this is what my father liked about me, was that I always knew. He would always look to me, even as a child, 4, 5, 6, to see if somebody was really honest or not. And so there's something about truthfulness that lies in this archaic mind that knows everything. And every so often it comes to the surface.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erin.
So if we get to the 8th house, so the 8th house is more the legacy. In my book, I called it Memento Mori, remember we must die. And it's very important to recognize the pattern from the 12th house of the collective unconscious in our families and our family line that goes way back. It's our immediate extended family, this 8th house. And it has to do with the family and the lateral family lineage. It actually is about remembering things that are related to cousins and uncles and people who are actually part of our blood, but they're not immediate family members in the mother and father and sisters and brothers. And so I was just thinking about that too in a different way, and that is that in the 8th house we really find it's often the house of inheritance, and sometimes the inheritance we've been left by our ancestors. We need to collect that inheritance, and it has very stringent rules in the sense that with watery domains, the 12th and the 4th house as well. This house also speaks of family lineage, but more so through metaphors and symbols and ciphers. I mean, the water houses are pretty cryptic, which is why many good astrologers have had to work very hard to get to the bottom of what a water house is really doing, even if it has an earth sign on it, for example. So I'm not thinking in terms of what's ruling the house. I'm thinking only of the interpretation. And with the 8th house, it's really what I call the Pontifex Maximus, which is actually the name of the Pope. But it's what it means is Pontifex Maximus in Latin is the big bridge. So it's the bridge between the ancestors of the deeper self, the 12th house, and the ego. And in the Catholic religion, the Pope is considered the Pontifex, and the pharaohs were the same. So the 8th house individual with planets in the 8th are specifically blessed and cursed with being the bridge in the family between sort of the secrets of the family in the 12th house and the openness of the obvious behavioral aspects of the 4th house. I mean, in a sense, none of the water houses are actually rational. I mean, there's no state of real synthesis achieved through reason in the 12th house. So that's why the water houses have to do with symbolism as opposed to actual articulation of an idea in clarity. It's the symbol. If you are particularly loquacious and you speak well, then you can interpret the symbols. And most astrologers actually do that. They actually have very strong 8th houses or 12th houses or 4th houses. And then their job is to try and interpret what it is that's really going on. And when we think in terms of sort of the planets like Pluto ruling it, it didn't rule it until 1931. Mars ruled it. And so in 1931, everything changed. I mean, Marie Curie actually died only 2 years later, and she's the one who invented, with her husband, uranium. And so we have a lot of sort of danger signals in the 12th house. Like, as I say, it's not actually rational, but it comes from the Greek symbolon, which is the word meaning symbol. And it is the object. It's an object or some symbol that we are, a precious ring, for example, might be an 8th house matter because it might have come down from the grandmother or longer. Or we have a very precious stick that we found in the woods that happened to occur at the same time as some kind of numinous experience that we have. So we're really talking about things that we can't really talk about very rationally. And, which is why I really, when I was writing Family Dynamics, and I was really struggling with the houses, the water houses. And I had a dream. And it was in the dream that it came to me, the first, the 12th, the 4th, and the 8th house. And it was in the dream. So it sort of was interesting that I got the information that I write about from the dream world, which is the spirit world, which is the psyche. And so it's coming from someplace much bigger than my little tiny mind that can only use so many, ways of expressing itself. Whereas the soul has many ways of expressing itself. And that's where Scorpio is really attracted to the mystery. I mean, it loves the mystery. It loves exploration of things that are not allowed. It's very ritualistic. It has to have, very significant ways of doing things and having things happen. And I think that we find that there are, situations where we get into, the idea that the 8th house does rule death. Well, it does, but it also rules death of the ego, because the ego in Latin means I am. And so it doesn't mean that you have to die, but it does mean that you have to let go of your ego to really understand the 8th house, and let go of your sort of previous thoughts about it, and to really try and explore it from a way that is more meditative than it is intellectual. I mean, like Jung felt that the two extreme moral poles, of good and evil, were capable of reconciliation, and that's where the 8th house comes in, because the suffering, the tension of opposites in full consciousness can actually bring transcendence into of both. And the sort of marriage of opposites, the mysterium conjunctio, the marriage of opposites, it brings about the fullness of wholeness. And that's what Jung was all about, is that he spent a lot of his time, unlike his friend Freud, they were great friends up to a certain point. And they shared a lot and learned a lot from each other. But that's what Jung would call the 12th house, would be the mysterium conjunctio, the marriage of opposites, the place where in the 8th house you have a relationship with something that reminds us that we will meet our end. And that's the memento mori. Remember that you will die, and that we're going to end and have to be living in harmony with that, as opposed to struggling with it in some intellectual way. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to add to or ask about?
Comment. Jeffrey Wolf Green also, through a dream, the Pluto paradigm came to him through a dream.
I believe it, yeah, because I edited it, the first edition.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And so what is it about your generation? What is it about the astrologers during those times?
Interesting. Okay. That is interesting, because the 8th house does have to do with astrology, because it's seeing the mystery in the symbol. And the symbolon, of course, is the thing where we remember that we will meet our ends. And so I think that the whole concept of having our generation is the Pluto in Leo. And I have Mars, Saturn, Pluto conjunct in Leo, and so does Jeff. And there's several people that do. My best friend, one of my best friends, he and Jim Lewis, had Mars, Saturn, Pluto, and Leo as well. And so there, a lot of the people who originated astrology that many people have left behind because they feel they need to discover something different, which is fine with me. I can't live forever and hold the shell forever. But the fact is that I think it's our generation that broke through, because when I was, I was like 17 when I was like, I knew something was going on, and I found this bookshop in Vancouver called the Yoga Vedanta. And I knew that there was something in there, and I went in there, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a kid, and I was just hanging around on the streets downtown, so I, had to do that as my teenage years. Went in there, found a book called Margaret Hone's Modern Textbook of Astrology. Well, it's a joke among our generation now because it's really, really difficult to learn how to set a chart through it. So I ended up teaching myself how to set horoscopes. I ended up reducing 14 steps to 8. And so our generation had to reinvent the wheel, basically. And so now we have to live through watching it disintegrate as opposed to integrate. So we were really into integration. And I think it really does have to do with the Pluto in Leo, which, it spent about 22 years in Leo. So it's a large generation of people born in that time zone, but in that time range. But it's the Saturn Pluto in the 1940s, say late 40s. And that's the one that really brought in the strong dynamic of astrology. You'll know that a lot of us elders in astrology are all in our 70s. Yeah. And so, that's a really good question. I hope I answered it in some way.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much. So you gave birth to these.
Gave birth. Yeah, we were the ones that were carrying the mystery, and we had to find the answer. And so we had to find the answer, and we found it through things like astrology, mythology, Jungian analysis, through various methods of divination. That's when it became normal as opposed to weird. So we actually turned the world around. And also we were one of the largest generations to hit the planet for a very long time. And so, and we have to also remember that it's the Western world, not the Eastern world, that you're talking about. Yeah, so it's Western consciousness in the Saturn-Pluto conjunction era in Leo, where people woke up, because in the mid-50s, Saturn and Pluto were conjunct in Libra. They make their conjunctions about every 25 to 50 years, according to wherever Saturn or Pluto is, because Pluto is beginning to elongate now. It's going to be, stay in Scorpio for quite a long time.
Yes, and it's interesting also that the north node of Neptune is in Leo.
Okay.
Is in Leo, and it would have been back then as well. Erin?
Oh, right. I have my south node. Yeah, my south node's in Scorpio. My north node's in Taurus. That's interesting. But I was born in 47. And so I'm right dead center in the Mars, Saturn, Pluto, Leo generation.
Yeah, and so you were drawing from the collective unconscious.
I was drawing from the mystery, because I'm also a Scorpio, with Scorpio square Pluto, Mars, and Saturn. And Pluto, Sun squared Mars, Saturn, Pluto, and Leo, Mercury in retrograde in the 12th house. Everything was a mystery. It all had to be solved. I was nothing but trouble, because I was always asking questions and forever plaguing. And my father loved it, but he was 16 Scorpio rising as well, with a Moon-Uranus conjunction. So he thought it was really interesting. But it freaked my mother out because she was just really super straight. And so, I think it was our generation, I have to say that, into the 50s, where we brought the consciousness of what we're heading toward, which is the end of an era, as I started out in the beginning with the Pisces age, the end of an era, and that we had to bring all the knowledge forward that we could. I can't think of any other reason.
Well, thank you. That was so interesting. Now, would you like the next slide, or?
Yeah, what are we looking at here? I think probably yes. Let's go to the 12th house. Right. Sorry, the 4th house. Now, the reason I did it in this order is because we're actually born when the ascendant is where it is. Okay, that is your birth point. So your 12th house is the first couple of hours after your birth. The 8th house follows that, which we just talked about, and that would be your lateral family members like aunts, uncles, and extended but blood related family. It also, like with the 8th house, it can also lead back to the origins of your family, which we don't really know, how we got to be as sentient as we are and as creative as we are. We really don't know our true origins. So it remains a mystery, and that's the 12th house. I'm sorry, that's the 8th house. But the 4th house is really straightforward. It's mother and father, mom, grandma and grandpa, their grandma, mother and father, all the way back up the whole line. It's the dynastic origin of the family. And it's also where we get a lot of our family stories from. And so there is a lot of imagination that goes on with people in families. And I think the 4th house and the moon and Cancer all have to do with, just really being present and accountable within the family of origins, and trying to really find yourself in place. Find yourself in a place where you are at home. And so you might find that, say, people with difficult planets planets aren't difficult. It's how we work with them that becomes difficult at times. But for instance, you have Pluto in the 4th house. I have seen so many people who have been adopted, but their birth times are known, who have Pluto in the 4th house. So it may be that the family is not just mom and dad and your siblings, but it also has to do with the upline of the family, the whole attraction, as I said up here, to trust and familiarity and physical touch and sensitivity, and a tremendous capacity for reciprocal love, which Pisces and Scorpio don't particularly carry, is a capacity for reciprocal love, unless it's, really impassioned. But with Cancer, it's much more gentle. There's something more gentle about Cancer's symbolism and way of playing with people. And also, like I wrote here, they can be really manipulative. But it's really a way of tricking you into playing or doing something that you wouldn't normally do. So anybody who is has moon in Cancer, or is a Cancer, or has planets in the 4th house, you probably know what I mean about manipulate. All manipulation means is it means to fold with your hands. That's what it means, literally. So if you're manipulating something, you're kind of toying with a concept, an idea, a situation, a person. You're fooling with them. There's a very strong psychic sense with all the water signs and water houses, regardless of whether they're ruled by Aries or whatever. You still have the base astrology in that house, regardless of what is in your horoscope. And so if you have, maybe somebody could give me an example of what have they got on the 4th house or in the 4th house, and I could try and work that one through. So has anybody got anything in the 4th house, or Cancer, or the moon?
I have Pluto.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you have Pluto in Cancer. Oh my, Carolyn, you've admitted something tremendously important.
Your Pluto's in Leo.
But it's in the 4th house in
When you said it was in Cancer, I was.
Oh no, it's in the 4th house.
Oh, you'd probably be dead by now, unfortunately. Anyway,
Oh, fortunately.
and you just reincarnated into being your age. Anyway, you have what? Pluto in your 4th house?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's conjunct series. And I was wondering
Okay.
about
No,
the
no, I'm
relation.
sorry. I don't know about I just need to know what planets, not
Okay,
asteroids.
just planet, just
Planet.
Pluto.
Okay, and where is Scorpio ruling in your house? In your chart?
Scorpio is ruling the 8th house
Oh, cool.
in my
Oh,
chart,
Cancer rising.
and my daughter has
Really?
Pluto in Scorpio in the 8th house in her chart.
Okay, so you are Aries rising or
Yep.
Taurus? Aries rising.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because it goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. And so you've got Pluto and Leo in the 4th house. Okay, right away that tells me that there is some kind of family secret that was held on to for a very long time until finally, when it became culturally appropriate, it was brought out. It may have been a gay uncle or something, really ordinary, or someone who ran away and never came back, or someone who went to jail. There could be a million reasons why Pluto in the 4th hides a family secret, because families like to hide secrets from the younger generation just in case they get any bad ideas. But Pluto in the 4th shows that you yourself, with that there, says that you've been really very, very important in your family to try and break down old ways of thinking and being. And maybe even studying astrology has been part of it, because your depth of vision probably did not match the depth of vision in your family. And so you were the oddball, the one who caused the problems because you're asking too many questions. And just being, a rambunctious kid who just had a lot of power. But it takes a really trusting, familiar, sensitive kind of family to actually raise a child without hurting them when they've got Pluto in the 4th house. And so I would have to say, if you were my client and we were sitting here on our own, I would say it looks to me like you were abused as a child.
Yep.
And that's that.
An uncourteous uncle.
Really. Very uncourteous. Yeah. So was that a mother or father uncle?
That was an aunt's boyfriend.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of, yeah.
That was, but it was like that was a secret that I only really discovered a few years ago.
That's hard. That's tough.
Yeah, but it's done and it's brilliant.
No, exactly. No, well, see, that's the other thing about Pluto is it regenerates.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll go through this every so often. It will rise, and then you say, "Listen, I've already been there, done that. I'm out." Okay, and so if that's the beauty of Pluto and Scorpio is that it does know how to let go.
The other secret in my family was suicide. Suicide was in my family
Self-death.
a good alternative. Suicide was a good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, in fact, in some certain cases, I guess I couldn't argue with it, to tell you the honest truth.
Yes.
Because sometimes life is just absolutely, utterly too painful. And I could see people, terminating their own lives. And that death does run a thread through your family line that is really significant because it's in your 4th house. And it's a Cancer house. It's the moon, the reception. And it has also to do with the family of origins. Yeah. Whereas the ancestral league comes through the 12th house, and the aunts and uncles and all that are in the 8th house.
Come back.
Come back?
Oh, I didn't hear you for a minute.
Oh dear.
You're back.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, I got lost. I was just saying, I can't remember. That often happens if I've said something, and then but yeah, I think that what we're looking at here is that with Pluto in the fourth house is possibly, and I don't know if I really ought to be able to be saying this, but it might be one of the most difficult places for Pluto to be. See, I have it in the fourth and the ninth house, so I can, with Saturn and Pluto, so I rationalize. I think things through in different ways. And so, yeah, so I think when it's in the fourth house, it's something that is running down through the family line, and you can't make it go away. You just have to be able to make it sort of reform it. Let's reform this situation. Let's make it acceptable to me. I mean, it's not worth being acceptable, but I have to accept it. Yeah. And so that's what you've had to go through, and what you didn't pass down to your kids.
Right.
See, now that's the big thing with Pluto in the fourth is that you don't pass it on.
There are no secrets between my daughter, well, between me and my daughter. She has her secrets, but family history, talking about whatever she needs to talk about whenever, even when she was a teenager who just thought I was the worst, she would come to me to talk.
Of course.
I
mean, of course she would, because she knows that, well, obviously you did not abuse your own Pluto, okay? But it abused you, and it taught you a lesson about abuse and how you not to abuse, your own children.
Right.
To give them time and space and freedom and the opportunity to discuss and talk and be open instead of closed and shut and terrified and dangerous.
Yeah.
That's great.
Her Pluto is in Scorpio in the 8th.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she's just come home from a job that fought with her integrity. For me, it was more a case, I subsequently heard, of her standing between Indigenous people tired of being shot and a young white cop with a rifle who, if he'd got nervous, could have raised it, and that would have been that. So she's not, I thought it was interesting in the 8th, you wrote, not afraid, physically not afraid.
Exactly.
And I've seen her jump horses into a foot of oozing mud.
I see. So she's a radical.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I mean, you had to hold together so that she could be a radical.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So she could be safe as a radical person.
Yes.
And so that's where the hardness for you, the pain for you, the suffering, the crying, the nights of grief, where that has come through in a way which is so incredibly significant to me in families with Pluto in the fourth house, is that you didn't pass it on.
No.
And that's where Pluto in Scorpio in the fourth house, or Pluto in any sign in the fourth house, Pluto is going to actually have a problem with feelings and love and security issues. I mean, as I wrote here. And these are the areas that you've had to really work hard on, and you still struggle with in love, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're not grown up yet. Nobody is. It's not over yet.
What did you call 72? You said you didn't turn 72. You were in your, was it quintile?
Oh, yeah, because 72 degrees is a quintile.
October. I'm a quintile.
Oh, right, yeah. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah, quintile. So I know, it struck me when I realized that being 72 meant that I'd lived 72 years, which means that the sun has moved 72 degrees against the ecliptic, which means that it's a quintile. So I thought life is a quintile, which means I've really got to change. I'm working on it.
We have another question for you.
Yes?
Thank you, Erin. That was excellent.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carolyn.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Della.
Hi, Erin. My My question is about the moon in the 8th. I have a Pisces moon in the 8th.
Oh, okay. So you're really aware of people who are lying. I mean, you're the kind of person, because I have a kind of Pisces fourth house cusp and Neptune in my 11th house. And I can walk into a room and look around, and I do this, and I can tell exactly who's going to be problematic. I know exactly who the troublemaker is. It's like being psychically in tune with the bad stuff, and that you yourself aren't bad, but or you probably could be naughty at times, but at the same time, it really has to do with being able to see beyond the obvious, and that can be uncomfortable, and sometimes can be lonely, because we all don't have people that we can talk about with it, if about these things with other people. Do you find that there's a sense of feeling separated?
Unmute. Sorry, Della, can you say that again?
Oh, I was saying yes, definitely a sense of like walking into a room and sensing what's up, but sometimes I would describe it as like not understanding the boundary, like where I end and someone else starts. And then maybe that was like earlier in life when I was like less mature, and now I have more awareness.
Very Neptunian, very, very Piscean, that one, where the boundaries are not really clear.
Yeah, and so then I would have Cancer on the 12th too. So my water signs are all in the water houses.
Okay, well, this draws an extra sensitivity into your nature, and that you can read into that, the various areas that we've just very briefly gone into.
Yeah.
And read them into your own chart and see how they've worked out, and how you've had to deal with family, with friends.
And definitely in regards to family, I definitely would say what you said about feeling isolated, because my family is super religious, like Christian religious.
Right.
And I'm not. As I've grown older into an adult, I'm not. I don't go to church.
Well, Christianity has a lot to do with Pisces, and I mean, the problem with religion is that it denies any other possibility, and I think if we have a mindset, like a lot of astrologers are like that, where they just are stuck on some theme or idea that they got in their brain, and have no idea that there's so many more ways of looking at astrology, and looking at spirituality, and looking at the soul, and we don't have to have a definition for it, and that's kind of hard for especially intellectuals to take, is that there's got to be a reason for it. I mean, Rupert Sheldrake would give you a great reason for it, and it would be very beautiful and very spiritual. But at the same time, it's really hard for watery people to really find their place in the world, because they feel that they are really at sea often, or that they remain innocent in ways which are shocking to them when they finally realize, my God, I was so stupid.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. And Linda, did you have anything to say?
Any more questions?
I can make a comment.
I can ask a question.
Oh, that'd be great, Sue. Sure.
I have, I love how you were saying that the 8th house is the bridge to the ancestors. Yeah. I have Jupiter and Pisces in the 8th house. I have Mercury conjunct the IC and Neptune in the 4th, and Uranus in the 12th. And I have been the bridge to the ancestors for my family by getting interested
Genealogy?
in genealogy, yes. And in fact, the Neptune could signify that I kind of helped discover that my mother had a brother that she didn't know about.
Oh.
That
How terribly watery and scorpionic and
yeah,
Plutonian. You're just describing your chart.
yeah, exactly. That's why I had to say it. Thank you, Erin. This has been wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Does anybody else have a question before? I think we have to go, actually.
Well, I just have a comment. Erin, I always learned from you. And you always speak about my daughter as if she was standing in front of you. And it's lovely.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, darling. I'm going to do this when I'm off camera. Seriously, it's one of those days. This is a very emotional day. I don't know. I mean, Linda and I were back and forth, and I said, I have to tell you, I don't really feel that great. I'm not sure I can do a really good job, but I'm going to do it anyway. And because we know each other pretty well after communicating and working together for so long, and I just was really honest. I said, I feel really weird. I feel like I don't know if I can do this, and she says, well, yeah, you can do it. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I obey orders well, and she's a good leader. But if it weren't for Linda, I probably wouldn't have been able to do today. And so I really appreciate your appreciation, everybody who's here, because there are times when, even if you've been public speaking for 70 years, practically, since I was a child, I've been talking to the public. My mother would drive my mother crazy. My father loved it. Yeah, I'll tell you a little story about my parents both have 16 Scorpio rising. I am 16 Scorpio rising with a 16 Scorpio sun, okay? My dad's a moon Uranus in the 7th house. My mom is moon Neptune in Virgo. And and they're divorced. But it was really quite a family to have grown up in, because the honesty on the part of my father was like incredible. And he thought I was an absolute riot. Whereas honesty on the part of my mother was completely just not possible. And I was not a complete riot. I was a show-off. When in fact, I was actually quite a funny little kid. And that's where, for example, I got Pisces on my 4th house and Neptune's in my 11th conjunct the moon. So obviously I need family, don't I? If I have Pisces 4th house, I need a family, and I need them to be my friends. And so I've ended up with, being involved with large groups of people like astrologers, who are my family. So we're able to pick our families. We're no longer confined anymore. So this is the beauty of the world today, is that we do have choices. And thank you for everything you've given.
We do have some feedback in the comments.
Okay. All right. I'm happy.
Says, as always, your grace and elegance shines through. Thank you, beautiful lady.
Oh, thank you.
Wendy, did you want to unmute?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Erin.
Well, hi, Wendy.
Hi. So great. I love this book. I read it in my mid-20s.
You should see my original copy. It's absolutely falling apart.
All my water houses are full, and I have Uranus in the 4th house, so I'm the family change agent, big time.
Yeah.
And so your book really, really helped me understand myself, because I have Pisces in the 10th. I have Saturn and Chiron and Pisces and Neptune and Scorpio, but I don't have any other water planets. but all my water houses are full. And so I was a rising Cancer, progressed rising Cancer for a long time. So I'm pretty psychically tuned in, and definitely the emotional body piece.
Yeah. You see, some of us have to carry the load for the rest of the family. And that can be very painful. It can also be extremely irritating to the family.
Oh, yeah.
But the family can be very angry because you think you're so together that you're carrying all the crap, pardon my language, that the family will not acknowledge. And so it does make them pick on you sometimes.
Or the opposite. I did irritate them for a long time, and then I became more of the elder, even though I'm the youngest child, because
Right.
they all come to me for like, what about this or what about that and blah blah blah. But I was the one that was like, I think there's like an elephant in the living room. Don't you all see it? Like, I see it. Like, I can't deny it. Wake up. But, I also have North Node and Jupiter and Vesta and Lilith in the 12th, or right on the ascendant. So
Well,
I
that's
also do a lot of processing for the collective.
That's interesting. Well, because that means if the 12th house has always interested me because, people forget that it's the 12th house that you're rising into as you're born, because the chart moves down and so all your planets start rising. And so the planets that are in the 12th house, at birth, are the ones that are the most powerful. They're not secretive or hidden. They're usually very, very dramatic. So I would think, yeah, you definitely were the circuit breaker, are still the circuit breaker of the family.
Yeah, working on it. Working on finishing a book.
Oh,
Diligently.
oh my God. Oh, congratulations. I have to write a new one and I don't know how anymore. I kind of forgot.
Yeah.
Many, and then I didn't have chance or time, love, and money all come in into the whole thing. It's all the 8th house stuff. Yeah. Well,
All right.
thank you
Thank
guys.
you, Erin.
Well, I'll see you next time.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think we're having a really good panel coming up, and that one's going to be really interesting in October. A panel we'll be working on.
Oh, somebody's asking what the title of your book is. Oh, Family Dynamics. Linda already answered it.
Oh, it's called the Astrology of Family Dynamics. And you can get it online on Amazon, and it actually is the first. If you showed the first slide, that was the cover of my book, the American edition.
Thank you. I wrote it down. I was a few minutes late, so I missed that part.
Yeah, I came in late too.
Oh.
Can I say one more thing? Yeah. Erin, so I have a 12th house moon, Capricorn, and all those planets are right on my moon right now, squaring my Mars. So I've been trying.
Oh, you mean Mars, Saturn, and Pluto are?
Where Pluto, Saturn is, but I have a natal moon Mars square, but I have the moon in the 8th, which is where all the Capricorn planets are now.
All right.
So anyway, that's kind of fun.
I'd want to look. To be perfectly honest, I'd want to look at that in context.
Yeah.
And but I'm not worried. I'm just wanting to make sure that I could say something about that, and I think it has to do with that you've never really quite felt you've grown into your own power, and that it's really important for you to do that at this stage, is to really. It sounds so corny.
No, it's so true, and it's really happening.
Yeah, no, and this is, I think, the beauty of midlife and aging, which is another book I wrote called Midlife and Aging, and it's really good. It goes up to my friends who are over 70 are saying, Erin, you should write another one. I say, I'm 73.
I have that book too, and I just turned 55 last week.
Oh, perfect. Oh,
yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. And I will say, Erin, you look fantastic. You look lovely.
73? Yeah, not bad.
Yeah,
Good genes.
You look lovely.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your saying that. That's really
No,
lovely.
I mean it. You look well.
It's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen you many times on these meetings, and I'm telling you, you look really well.
Okay. Oh, Erin, are you ready to wind down? Or-
Yeah, I think we probably should. Yeah, it's 3:21.
Well, it's
My
such a fantastic meeting, and you weren't feeling well. And are you feeling better now, or?
Yeah, I do. I feel much happier having talked to people. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Just changing our information and our knowledge, and hearing stories and
What's on
talking astrology always makes me feel better.
what signs on your 12th?
On my 12th house is Scorpio, and
Scorpio.
Mercury retrograde in Scorpio on the 12th, and Scorpio rising.
Wanting to chat.
What?
Wanting to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that also your books, Erin? Deep, informative for the collective.
When I was writing, I was very, very involved in it, and very deep. And it was a different time in my life. I mean, it was London, and I wrote Midlife and Aging in Santa Fe after I left London, but I wrote all the other books when I was in England. And being an editor with Arcana, Contemporary Astrology series, which my close friend Howard Susportas, who died of AIDS, of the plague. Let me think of it. He started the Contemporary Astrology series, and I took over. So that was where, and then my first book published outside of and then Sam Weiser took mine on when Arcana got shut down in New York. And then I wrote The Astrology of Midlife and Aging for Penguin, and I haven't written anything since. And so I really need to write a book, and my kids want me to write my memoirs, which on one hand would be a great idea, and on another hand, I'm kind of afraid of the secrets.
I have your Saturn book too, that Saturn report. That's an excellent.
Oh, the heroic journey, isn't it?
Love that. Yes. That was the first thing I ever got of yours. Or I think I found your Saturn book on the shelf, and then I was like, I got to order this. It was fantastic.
Personal heroic journey is the most creative thing that I put together with a woman named Rebecca Martin, who did all of the artwork and the and I wrote the thing myself, and she's the one that collates it and sends it out when you order it. But the heroic, your personal heroic journey is a miracle. I still read mine.
Yeah, mine still works because my Saturn's in the 8th right now. I'm going to have my Saturn return when it hits my 10th, and by God, I'm going to have at least one book done by then.
Good for you. Well done.
Pray to God.
Good luck. Good luck. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Say that
See you next time.
Before we go, Erin, just wanted to say that you sent me a recording of your talk at the United Astrology Congress in 1998.
I did send it.
Yes,
And it is great.
family dynamics, or I can't.
You're shy.
So I'll create a Zoom meeting out of that, and so everyone can watch it. Okay.
Oh, that would be really
Awesome.
that would be great, because it really is coherent. It's absolutely. I listened to it, and I was terrified for today because I spoke so cogently, and I thought, gee, this is a group. This is not just about me. Whereas you definitely make that available to people to have. Definitely.
And you are still so brilliant, Erin. So thank you so much from all of us. Would you all please thank Erin Sullivan?
Thank you, Erin.
Thank
Such
you,
a gift
everybody.
you are.
I appreciate you. Yes.
Thanks again.